All right, man, dude. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
So this is another episode of Well, It's Something Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hilton, and he came back, Andrew Brown.
What's up, everyone?
But today it's going to be a little different. We're going to be talking about, I want to talk about your podcast.
Okay.
Because I did your podcast 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
And it was the coolest experience ever, man. It was like the first time for me, for being on, for me to be a guest on a show. So
you were an
I
incredible guest. You have an incredible story to tell. Not to derail you.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Where you're talking, but yeah, you had an incredible story to tell. So I was very excited that you were willing to come on it.
Oh yeah, sure. Dude, I loved it. And let me say something. I love when people interview me because I told you I was like, don't send me the questions, anything like that. I love being put on the spot with like questions about myself. I'm like, ooh, I'll tell you everything, baby.
You definitely, well, as the conversation grew, you definitely held on to the spotlight. So.
Oh yeah, and sorry if I was talking over you.
What I liked about you as a guest is that you interrupted me.
Tell me.
And what I mean by that is, if you didn't finish your train of thought, you were willing to finish that train of thought. And think about how many people who don't do that.
Yeah. And because they get kind of mixed up with what they were just talking about.
Exactly.
And then they're they're at a stop loss.
Oh my gosh. That's foreshadowing, audience.
Yeah.
This comes up before mine.
So, but yeah, no, I felt it was fun, dude. And it's really cool that you got a studio now. Like you got a room now. So and it sounded great in my ears when we were doing it.
Going through it, we recorded last night with me and last night being June 10th. Whenever this comes out. But we were very fortunate, me and George, and me specifically, George I guess a little bit. He's fortunate enough in his own way.
Oh yeah,
but
we all know.
I'm very fortunate with the blessings that I've had recently in this world, meeting new people and getting to conspire with them to start a process of being creative in audio, and it's really cool to see that work. But I guess we talked on the last time about the Diamond State Murder Board, which is the first podcast I've ever produced, hosted, and got me into this world. And by doing that, which is a true crime podcast.
Now, that was your first podcast you did, right?
Okay. I co-host, I produce. As you listen to them, you'll realize that I don't co-host, and then all of a sudden I co-host way too much. So, anyways, that got me into working with another company called Legacy Insurance. And they decided what they wanted to do. And in Arkansas, they're a local-based insurance agency. They take over from Nationwide. So basically, they took over Nationwide's office here in Jonesboro. And then they're their main contributor to the insurance world, but they also have other branches they can go through for all your insurance needs. They did not pay me to say that.
But you did it very well.
They do pay me to help produce their podcast called The Legacy Lowdown. And I
didn't know they did a podcast.
Yeah.
So that's something new to me. I didn't know about that.
That's why we have the studio there, yeah.
No way. So they do this, also, I'm assuming they probably do their podcast there. So what do they talk about?
Exactly. So Legacy Lowdown, it's a really cool concept. It's a concept that's probably, you'll see grow more and more. But they've cooked up this idea. What they do is they talk to local business owners, local interesting people, and discuss their impact to the Jonesboro community. So, for example, our first episode was done. We interviewed James Bickham, who's a famous photographer and videographer here in Jonesboro. He does all of the ASU stuff. He does quite a few school stuff, but he also does big weddings. And he did a lot of stuff during 2020, during lockdown, that was just really powerful. And it did a lot of stuff for the Jonesboro, Arkansas Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of just great artwork there. We interviewed him and his impact in social media. We interviewed Andy Shatley recently, who ran in the mayoral race last year, and he played baseball. And so we talked to him about his Jonesboro upbringing because he grew up here quite a bit. And we have other cool guests coming in there, but it's just their impact in Jonesboro, what they plan on doing further in Jonesboro, and the legacy they want to leave.
That's cool.
And so that's kind of how I got into touch with them and helping produce their podcast.
That's a great name too.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And it's literally, we keep on getting more and more downloads and subscribers and people commenting saying like, I didn't know this about this person, or for example, a great one, and not to keep plugging them, but like a great one that was really inspiring to me is we talked to a guy named Don Howard, who's he was head of ICU. I can't remember exactly the term it's called, but basically he ran ICU during 2020, so all through COVID. Yeah. And the impact of
he's probably got a story to tell.
Oh my gosh, it's insane to think about the different things he talked about as far as just because no one was allowed to be in the ICU as loved ones were passing away.
Oh my gosh.
Heartbreaking.
Dude,
so anyways, that was just so impactful to me, and I literally listened to it twice in the editing process because I wanted to be like, wait, did I actually get that keyed in right? Was his volume up enough on the impact of talking about that?
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But anyways, getting in touch with them, they allowed me to use their studio to start recording a podcast that I've always wanted to do because I grew up loving movies, and so my podcast is going to be called
let's steer into that. So your podcast, called The Professionals, which is so funny because I made a Facebook post about it when we did it.
Yeah.
And I put a picture of you standing by the table and you're like doing this, and I said The Professionals. I didn't say The Professionals Podcast. So my people commented on it and saying we're like, yeah, you guys are professionals. I was like, no, that's not what I meant. We're not professionals at this. We're not professionals at this at all.
You are professional at this, though. I've watched.
But no, so like I said, I had a great time doing your podcast. Can I explain, or do you want to talk about it? Like,
you explain, and I'll just fill in the holes.
What you had me do, I'm going to explain it anyways. Yeah. You had me watch a movie about something I did before I came here, like my job title, right?
Yes,
or my job. Which was the Army, of course. So you had me watch Stop Loss.
Yep.
And I did. And it was my first time ever seeing the movie, okay?
Yeah, that's super cool that you've never seen it before.
Really? Yeah. I've never even heard about it until you said it.
Okay.
So that was really cool. So you had me watch that, and now you have guests come on your show and kind of explain the differences between how you felt about the movie, your experiences, your real life experiences, and kind of like how it intermingles.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the movie. So how in the world did you think about that? Like, you started working in a movie theater too.
So yeah,
so it has something to do with that.
Yeah, so basically, I've loved movies since I was a little kid. I mean, Star Wars was such a big impact on me as a little kid. The Ninja Turtles movie was the first movie I saw in theaters. You fat Asian kid growing up in the United States, you gravitate towards nerd things, and I loved it all. So first job, like he just said, was at the movie theater. I worked there for almost 10 years. I was like right at 9 years and 10 months.
And that was in Florida, right?
No, it's here.
I was here. Okay.
Yeah. I moved. The reason I quit working at the theater was moving to Florida.
Ah.
And so, but watched movies all the time, consumed movies all the time. We had a store here called Hastings.
I remember that store. Dude, I just wrote that's the first store I bought Saving Private Ryan at.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So on their DVDs and Blu-rays, there was always buy two get one for a penny.
Yeah.
And all their used stuff. And so because of that, I would just consume movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get a paycheck and I dedicate like $30 to buying about 5 movies, depending on what worked out at the time. And so anyways, love movies. And so when I got into the realm of podcasting, when I actually was listening, just as a consumer, as a customer, as a ear, I listened to movie-based podcasts. So I listened to like the first one that got me into it. Not that they need any plugging. Was called "How Did This Get Made?" It's a few comedians. They sit around and they watch a bad movie and they literally dissect how did this movie get made. And then it went into I listened to one called "We Hate Movies," which is a group of critics who do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then I got obsessed with the Rewatchables, which is a group of sports journalists who write about movies. And anyways, that's 75% of my podcasting now is movie-based podcasts. But there's so many bad movie or good movie podcasts already out there, and I wanted to think of a way that I could A, be different, and then B, talk to a guest every week. Because it would be weird to just be like, hey, I want you to watch Superbad this weekend, and we're going to talk about it. Like, there's no real interest outside of it's a comedy. I'm sure you like to laugh, I like to laugh, but there's no real interest in it that we both bring to the table. But
hey, you were in the Army, right?
Yeah, right.
Let's watch Frozen.
Yeah, exactly. I want you to tell me how this snow monster was.
Yeah.
And
I let it go.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
Keep going. I already lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
No, I was kidding. And so that's what it was. And I was actually working at the gym that I work at, and I was talking to our tennis instructor about the movie Wimbledon, which is a tennis movie that came out in the early 2000s and has Kirsten Dunst and Paul Bettany, and they both play tennis players. And we were joking around that movie, nothing to do with this podcast or anything like that. He just goes, "The movie's terrible. It's so unrealistic. Nobody stands there and yee-haws and claps for themselves when they score a point in the biggest tournament in the world for tennis." And that the light bulb just hit, where I was like, man, if I can just talk to people about a movie that they actually have some kind of foray in, whether it be their job or their biggest hobby, or I have two guys that are twin brothers, and we're going to actually watch the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito and talk about that. So if I can have an interest from them into it, I think that's a great insight. Like with Ian's episode with Stop Loss, where we talk about a movie, it's about guys about the same age as Ian dealing with the impacts of war. And getting to hear his perspective on realism versus unrealistic music choices, actor choices, that's very, very interesting to me.
Yeah. So. And I'm telling you, dude, it was I'm going to say this 1,000 times, dude, it was so fun, just like you asking the questions.
Yeah.
It was just like, but, so let's, during that show, after the show, we kind of were like, oh man, I wish we would have said that, but I'm going to kind of put this out now, I'm going to say it now.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we were really talking about was how, in the movie, and we talked about this, it's whatever.
Sure.
You asked me if I still keep in touch
Can I preface this too with saying, we recorded this the day after Memorial Day, so this leads into what he's about to say.
Yeah. And so, do I still keep in contact with the family set, the two people that I lost, in my first deployment? Yes. And I did. I send them a text, pretty much June 9th, Memorial Day, and I try to keep them, just let them know that I'm still.
If I get done, June 9th, was that
that's the day
after? Okay.
Yeah. And so it's so funny that you asked me that, because on that day, Memorial Day, one of the moms got to throw the first pitch at is that Wrigley Field?
Yeah,
in
the
Chicago?
Cubs. Yep.
At the Cubs, yeah. And I watched that video and I started crying, bro. It was so cool. Yeah.
I would be moved too,
Yeah.
not knowing her or her son, but knowing your story from it is moving to me.
Yeah, because it was like they had the camera on her, and then on the background they were showing pictures of Aaron, and hanging with dad or hunting or whatever. So it was just so cool that she got to do that. It was just a big ordeal. But
and I feel bad because again with my podcast I'm trying to keep it about an hour, 40 minutes to an hour, and we were already over that hour mark. And it's such an important part of the movie. If you watch Stop Loss, in the second act, the main character played by Ryan Felipe does quite a few visits to people that had passed under his command, and then a soldier who was injured under his command, that he just that's such an impact of why he's not wanting to go back. And you watch the movie and you understand the impact. So it's really important for me to ask Ian that. We never had the time, and I'm glad that he's given me a chance to bring this to light, because it's such an important part to the film, to Ian's story for who he is now, and it's something that I think a lot of people can, if they can't understand from being in that situation, it definitely shows some empathy of like, wow, I can't imagine.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's the thing is, like, you won't know until you put yourself in the shoes, when that happens, But like the families are still talk with them and make sure they're I'm sure they're happy. Anyways, we'll move on from this. So
it's tough, man. We went straight into to deep. So understandable.
That's my show. Welcome. But yeah, dude. So you went to college, right?
Yes, sir.
And you originally, I think I broke my pitch. So you originally wanted to be a history, or you were a history major. And you wanted to be a history teacher.
Is that you remember?
It's so funny, dude. Because when I talked to George,
George who? Who's this guy? I've never heard of him.
Gerard.
The guy with two first names. No, I love George.
George. He wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah. And he would have been a darn good lawyer.
Yes, but he never went that way. And so
I think he has no regrets either.
I don't get exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so it's so common with some people, like I studied this, and they almost don't. They follow through. They complete the degree, but they don't. That's not.
Let's rewind. Ian, 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
What did you think you were going to be when you got to our age now?
Rockstar. Yeah, I wanted to be a drummer for a metal band or some kind of new metal band.
I wanted to be a history teacher and a comic book artist. So
interesting.
No, again, I'm not saying, there's so many people that I know who at 10 years old said I was going to be a dentist, I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, they're a teacher, they're a dentist.
Exactly,
they did that. But there's so many people that we can put up this pressure. You have to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're not an adult.
Exactly.
You're going to fail. There are people.
It's like you didn't earn something.
Yeah. There's factory jobs. There's so many jobs out there. I just learned that a manager of In-N-Out makes $160,000 a year. A fast food chain. Now it's a very exclusive fast food chain over there, but still, like there are so many jobs out there. Now that one might take a college degree, but there's so many jobs out there that don't. That people can be just fine at. That we need. So I don't understand this pressure of if you don't go to college, suck at life.
Yeah. And then now you're stuck in debt.
Oh, absolutely.
You're stuck in debt.
I took the dumbest classes in college to think that they were going to. I'm going to rephrase that. Not dumbest college. Not dumbest classes. But there's a lot of classes that I took that were legitimately like I don't practice today. Outside of I learned how to take really good notes in that class.
Right. Yeah. But So what would you think that you would have done? You would have taught history or?
Oh yeah, so I wanted to teach history. I had an incredible history teacher in high school. Indiana Jones was my favorite movie character. I mean, again, in history, yes, it's a lot of writing papers. Yes, it's a lot of, remembering dates and a lot of events that are horrific and or kind of, unbeneficial in the aspect of everyday life. But learning from past mistakes is such an incredible way to live a brighter future. And also knowing, like, the history of the United States is incredible. I mean, like, I know that we have, like, a lot of flaws, and I'm not going to by any means defend those flaws, but, I mean, starting from, coming over here from England, like, all of it's just a pretty insane story.
I just wish I would have paid more attention. Like, now, because I'm going back to college, because it only took me 12 plus years to really go back. Because I've been in previous colleges, I just never finished. But I really just wish that in high school I would have paid more attention to some classes. Were way ADD, and I just didn't care. I didn't hate high school, I just hated the learning part of it. I met amazing people there.
It's not.
But man, I did not pay enough attention, and I wish I would have, because now when I look back at history, I love history. I watch documentaries on the butt, dude.
Yeah.
And especially on World War II, that fascinating. It's probably not like a dark thing to go down to. Like I watch myself on some of that, but learning about different wars, like World War I, learning about how the strategies, like how the higher leaders went in to dictate where to go and maneuver, into stuff like that. Like, because when I was in the Army, we had to learn maneuvering and stuff like that. So it was like kind of like spun up and some ideas and stuff. So
the evolution of war in general, like think about the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Like you stand in a line, I stand in a line. You shoot first, I shoot second. Let's see how many people legitimately think about until somebody retreats. I mean, in the Civil War, we had a job for young kids to play the drums, to have a beat for these guys to march, to stand in lines and shoot at each other. I mean, the progression of now, you in front of your laptop, if you with the right technology, you could start a war.
Oh no. Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
You sitting here in the comfort of your own home can start a war. Like, why?
Cyber attacks everywhere.
Yeah, and again, and because I'm not saying that kids are being uneducated, but they're not getting hands-on experience on their education because of technology, which I love. I love my technology. I love my iPhone. Can't live without it, I don't feel like. But because of that lack of hands-on, and again, I know that, like, for example, 2020 pandemic, I understand, be safe.
Yeah.
But due to that kind of things, you're not learning as much. You're not retaining as much information, in my opinion. And again, I don't have kids, so I don't have skin in the game. I just hearsay.
Yeah. Now, so I'm gonna go back to your podcast. What is your absolute dream? To go into like deep detail. What do you want to come out of your podcast? Do you want to do many podcasts? Do you want to do one podcast?
So it's kind of weird, and what I'm about to say is going to sound like such a cheesy, cop-out answer.
Yeah.
I'm already living it, man. Like, I got to produce, I'm producing now 3 podcasts. Hosting 1, co-hosting 2, producing 3. Like, so, like, that's...
Time of Same Murder. Professionals. What was the other one?
Legacy Lowdown. That's me. I produce it. That's,
gotcha.
I'm behind the... I got the headphones on. I'm monitoring the sound for the hosts, the 2 hosts, the guest. So I'm monitoring all that. I'm taking it home. I'm throwing it in my MacBook Pro, editing it. I'm having it up on the server Monday morning, 5 a.m. So that's That's one of the things that I do. But I've always dreamed of producing one. I've always dreamed of hosting one. And so meeting George has blessed me into getting into being a co-host and producing something where he has the content already laid out. Legacy Lowdown has given me the opportunity to be a full-on producer, to meet cool new people, make new connections, and to truly learn about something I didn't know about before.
Right.
And then my podcast that I had Ian on, that I'll be releasing soon.
Oh,
has
and
given
by the
me the
way,
opportunity.
first one on.
Yeah, he is. True story.
Thank you.
And because of that, it's been able to actually let me talk about my passion. I love movies. You know, there was a dream in the many years ago where it'd be cool to make my own movie. You know, people ask me, like, if you won the lottery, what would you do? I'd open my own movie studio.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't know how to, like, make the movie,
But
I would learn, and I would want to make the movies that I would want to see. I would want to read the scripts and be like, no, this makes sense to make this. Like, why can't they make a good Dragon Ball Z movie? Or like a good Mortal Kombat movie? Like, why can't they make... I would want to be, as a fan, be able to make the most expensive fan-made film ever.
Right.
On something I liked.
You know, it's so funny, man. I never thought of myself ever doing this.
Mhm.
You know, back in 2018 in July,
Yeah.
after I got in an accident,
Yeah.
right? I'm sitting in physical therapy, and I get this itch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to
On your leg?
on the leg I can't feel.
That's
like,
right.
anything, yeah. And I'm getting this like want to do a show because I'm listening to these podcasts.
Yeah.
Dude, and the way they act like during the, you know, these podcasts is mainly like comedy podcasts I
Yeah.
listen to. Some, not really, I don't listen to serious podcasts. I just need to like listen to something that I can just totally be mindless to.
You have to, yeah.
So I'm listening to these podcasts and I'm like, man, it looks so much fun. Like they're making each other laugh.
Yeah.
I want a good conversation where I can just laugh and laugh, you know, and like I'm sitting in physical therapy. I'm like, I think I'm gonna do a podcast.
Yeah.
So it started off with me with an iPhone and a USB port
Mhm.
and a little connector that went into your iPhone, and me just talking about how to deal with stress and anxiety being in the military
Yeah.
or being in the army.
And I feel like there's somebody in this world that needs to hear that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
But I just got bored of it because there was, you know, there's so much you can talk about with that. So I kind of went on to like, now I was struggling for a really, really long time of what the basis topic I wanted to talk about or anything basis my show was going to be, you know,
Okay.
like a certain topic. And I was struggling, like, I don't have any ideas. And then I thought to myself, like, why don't you just have anything and anybody on? You know, talk about whatever. So, and now that I found you and Jared, that now we can talk about podcasts.
Yeah.
Something that we love to do, something that we can both agree on and share about. Dude, it's great, you know?
And it's, again, I agree everything you said. And what's cool about it, is that anyone can do it. Like, if you have something to say, everyone has a story. You know, part of me almost called the podcast that I'm producing Storytellers, but A, I forgot that that's a VH1 video, and B, that it's not as much as, like, I want to talk to professionals in a field, but, you know, everyone does have a story. It's like your story, learning from yours on the situation that happened that led to you having to keep in touch with people's parents who unfortunately passed right in front of you. That's a terrible story, but an incredible story that you can tell that might inspire somebody else who's seen loss, who's seen hurt, who's seen the dark side of the military. Like I mean, movies, like when we talk about Stop Loss, the first 20 minutes of it is almost a propaganda film to a degree of just saying, like, the military rules, look what we get to do, you love Call of Duty, you'll love this. But it's not that way as the movie progresses and as your story progresses, to me.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it wasn't until we were live on mic, you tell me what actually happens, and I'm like, you were part of that? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. And somebody will be inspired by that story. Somebody might be angry at that story, but everyone needs to hear everyone's story. And I think that everyone should have an opportunity to talk. And these podcasts that people are putting out there give you the opportunity to tell that story. And that's incredible.
It is. And, honestly, for even being a host of a show, having somebody on your show telling your story is also a great service.
Yeah.
You know, to get your story out, to get whatever.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, like going back to that, it was that when that whole thing happened, it was on 60 Minutes, and it's so funny that you said that because you're like, I didn't think that you saw that.
Yeah.
And my intention, I didn't think you saw that 60 Minutes documentary and what happened in my first deployment.
Yeah.
And You're like, yeah, I remember that. Like, I think I was in Florida. And
Now,
I was like,
let me preface this with, I'm not Mr. News. I'm not Mr. Adult on that. It's one of those things that popped up on a Facebook news feed.
Yeah.
But you instantly have to click it because it was like breaking news. This happens, and
I have to preference this too. It doesn't happen to me. I mean, it happened to my platoon and a whole company. It wasn't just me. So
right.
It happened to a lot of people. It was a mess. But anyways, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. And I always appreciate when you preface stuff like that, like as a guest or a host, because I had a gentleman who was in the West Side shooting, and I interviewed for Diamond State Murder Board, and he was made it very clear to preface. He was there. He was there. He heard everything. He saw some things, but he was not in the actual line of fire there. He was still in that class. He was still part of the fire drill, but where he ran to, and the little group he ran with, went to a different way of completely bypassing all the true fire. Still, PTSD, still shocking to him as a sixth grader, but not in the exact line of fire. And I appreciate him being honest with that, but still can tell me about that.
Yeah, because I don't want the limelight on me because I'm not the show. Like I wasn't anyways, yeah. But yeah, no, like you almost have to, because if you don't, somebody will watch this, and it's like.
And again, that's the tricky slope of the internet, right?
Yeah.
Your intentions are 100% good. Someone's intentions are good, but you slip up on one way you say something, it turns into complete and utter darkness.
Does making that clear? But yeah, man.
So let me turn the tables.
Oh.
So you're I know, right? Podcasting realm for you, what have been the ups and downs for you? What have you enjoyed about it, and what's something you've not enjoyed about it?
So, like when I first started doing this, I think a lot of people were just, I don't want to say taking pity on me, but they were like watching it just to comment, or like and a comment on like, hey, good job, because it wasn't really good. It was okay, for starting out. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So the ups was just like getting up and doing it so much now to where I'm comfortable in front of the mic.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at talking and being a host and actually carrying the conversation on.
Yeah.
With another guest. But I don't want to talk too badly on it. It's just that's a good question, bro. The downs, that's what it is, man. The downs is not having, in my eyes, the right equipment. When I was on Amazon cheap buying everything.
Yeah.
So I had this cheapy DVS camera that was they said it was HD, but it was probably 24i or 240i.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. And it just the wrong equipment. It sounded terrible. And so now learning, and doing my actual research and figuring out what flows with what you can use, and I like this setup. This is better than where I first started. So it's just not having the right equipment and then saying the wrong things, it just, I don't know, just stuff like that. Yeah.
No,
what about you, man?
I'm the same way. I think our first two set of microphones we got were dynamic mics, and they were just picking up everything.
Yeah.
I mean, little things like that was frustrating.
Yeah,
exactly. And they were like a dog barking or just tapping on the table, things like that. And then our arms were real they weren't as tight. So if I barely touched something, it went.
So and another down too was trying to find people to come on your show.
Yeah, they don't want to take you seriously, do they?
Plenty of guys that I would love to have a conversation with, because there's plenty of people that I've asked that have interesting stories. Like, why don't you come on my show and tell me that story? And they're like, yeah, and and it's just like, come on, man.
There's a few people. I mean, it's getting more popular now.
Yeah.
But there's a few people that honestly don't understand what a podcast is, what YouTube is even. And then there's some people too that they're not comfortable with it. They're not comfortable with their story. I mean, even with this Legacy Lowdown podcast that I help produce and that I love doing, there's certain people that legitimately that would be the best guest, and they're just like, nah, we're good. And this is
it's like you see
free advertisement.
It's like you see them off camera, and they're so they know how to talk, and oh, you're funny. Oh, you're so good. As soon as if your camera on or your mic's on and they hear themselves, they're like,
yeah. When you started with podcasting on the editing side, did you ever cringe at your own voice?
Yes.
I still do myself, man.
It's getting better now. Like when I first started out, it was just like, hey, turn it off. I just put it up there. I don't care what happens, just put it up there. And then when people watch it, then they watch it, you know. Now I have to come listen because I edit it, you know, I have to put certain things in there, and then if I slip up and say something, then I have to go back and, you know, do whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit easier to like just kind of like sit there and listen, even especially if it's funny.
Yeah.
Like if I said something that was kind of funny, I'll listen to it like, oh, that was kind of clever.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that was kind of clever. Or the guest said something that was clever. I was like, oh, that was actually really funny.
Absolutely.
And like one of the first podcasts I did with Matt, the second podcast I did with Matt, Secrets. Yeah. We were talking about how sometimes living in an RV, you have to, you know, pull your black tank. What your black tank is where your poop goes, right? And I didn't notice that there was a little slit in the hose that the poop comes out of. And so I pulled the handle and poop landed on my hand. We were cracking up for at least like 15 seconds because, like, you know, sometimes they don't do that, but it's disgusting. But it was in the time, in that moment, the way I was presenting the story.
Yeah.
It was funny, you know. So what I did was I took that clip.
It says that's hot.
Yeah, that's hot. What I did was I cut that clip out.
Yeah.
And I put it in the front of the show. In the front of the show to like, keep like a ooh, oh, they're laughing. It's kind of it's not really incentive, but it's like it's like a starter.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a good starter. And then it fades out.
That's like why a band plays their semi-biggest hit at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. So it's like learning different ways of presenting the show to people is another way too. Because you're audio, I'm audio and video.
That's true.
So I'm doing, and going back, I'm a host, so I have to make sure the camera's good. I gotta make sure the lighting's good. I gotta make sure the mics are working and turned on. My computer's charged. So I'm like the engineer, host, and everything like that. So I'm not bragging, but it's a little difficult, especially when you're first starting out. You want to make sure everything's perfect.
That's like you said with the equipment. The moment, what's crazy is when you're monitoring your levels on that, you're hearing it in the headphones, you're monitoring your levels on your computer. Everything's set up to sound so good. Now I do photography as well. Same thing. Yeah. I'm judging a photo that I took off a screen that's maybe 2 by 3 inches, and it looks incredible on the thing. But then you throw it at the beginning, you throw it up on your computer, and you're like, how did I get their nose so blurry? Why isn't their arm? Or like, I was so adamant on making that sharp depth of field that I was going so low, and so it's a family of 4, and the 2 people, I'm just like, I owe them their money back. This looks terrible. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's crazy. Everything's a learning.
It really is.
But let's to take it back to history. It's like that's part of your history. Like that's what's crazy. It's to learn from your mistakes and move forward.
You have to fail in order to get somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's like you're gonna fail.
And think about anybody who's incredible at something. Like I think like Rogan. Think about Rogan in the podcast world. Think about
him often.
Yeah, right. It's he probably has some stinkers at the beginning. You know, like he probably has some audio technical difficulties. I mean, I see all these podcasts now that are done over Zoom, or if you still watch late night talk shows, 50% of them, their guests are still over Zoom. And you hear the background stories of like it took them 30 minutes for the engineer to set up the Zoom call and stuff like that, and you're only as strong as your weakest link, so the guest might be incredible, but because they can't figure out their audio on the laptop for them at home, and, you know, there's little things that you're still learning.
You know what's so funny too is that when you're watching the late night talk shows or late night shows, is that the delay.
Yeah.
That's what gets me, because when say like there's like the host says a punchline, and then it's like, oh yeah, and you're like, oh yeah, you're like, oh,
it's tough.
Yeah,
it's wild. And again, I feel like we both have our foot in the right direction because I see more and more celebrities doing a podcast. I mean, I know that like one of my favorites is Conan O'Brien. Okay. And he has an incredible podcast.
Conan O'Brien does a podcast.
It's incredible. So think about it. Think about he gets to talk to a guest for an hour instead of 7 minutes, and in that 7 minutes they're also trying to promote a movie. Okay. So now that he's an hour of talking about whatever,
he can say whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot. He can say whatever he wants. Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes just started a podcast about Smartless, and they've been doing this for about I think 9 months now, maybe close to a year. And then and they have some incredible. And they had Kamala Harris. They've gone from there to Paul McCartney to George Clooney, all the way down to just the head of Arrested Development, who's still a good guy.
We have George Jarrett.
Yeah, I know. He's gonna love that one. He's gonna love the plug and the stab at the same time. But
it was so funny every time I posted a podcast we did. His main comment is my man.
Yeah, I get that same one. I thought I was his man, but I guess he's got more than one man.
Oh my god! Speaking of that, I'm so glad you said that. I got something to tell you. This is pretty funny. My landlord caught me off the other day.
Oh,
He caught me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing out on my porch. He goes, you know, Ian, I noticed when your wife leaves for work, a lot of these guys are coming over because she's at work. And this was like as when Jared was leaving. He was like, I was like, it's not what you think, man. It was funny.
Are you opening up a brothel? It's like a brothel for bros?
Yeah. And there's like a sign on the door that says, don't knock. Don't interrupt.
We're closed. Beat it.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, that's great. Hey, thanks man for coming on.
Oh, for sure.
Plug whatever you're doing.
All right. So we got 3 shows we've already talked about.
Yep.
Diamond State Murder Board, I believe if this airs this next week, we'll have 2 episodes left for season 1. We will be taking about a 2-month break during the summer. George has got some stuff going on, and that's when I'll be producing the professionals. It'll be an 8 to 10 episode series. I can't decide if we're going to do it at 8 or 10, but it's going to take Diamond State's place for the summer on our server
that's right.
feed. And then season 2 will be up and running. We've already got 1 episode recorded for season 2, and we've already got some guests in the works that are mind-blowing. George's connections to get some guests. So season 2 is going to be pretty incredible.
That's great.
There's some cool stuff, some breaking news coming out in the next few months that hopefully we'll be able to shine some light on as well. And then the Legacy Lowdown. If you're in the Northeast Arkansas area, give it a listen. You'll learn some stuff about pretty famous people in the Northeast Arkansas area. People that you see in Occasions magazine, people who you probably shop at their store or talk to regularly that you didn't realize has such an interesting story. So give it a download and listen. All our podcasts you can find on Apple, you can find on Spotify, you can find on Amazon, Stitcher, stuff like that. So just anywhere you listen to podcasts, I guarantee it'll be up and running. But anyways, that's the main things we're doing. And also, if you want a gym, go to the gym.
Yeah, that's where we go.
Yep.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Well That's Something Podcast. I don't ever do this like a weekly process. This is whenever I can get somebody on to talk to because I'm just doing those stuff. But just look forward to new episodes coming out and just hit that like and subscribe button, please. If you would, that really helps me out. And you have a good one.